At Easter dinner, my brother's wife said, "You're not really part of this family, you're just the ATM." Everyone laughed. I didn't. I also didn't pay for their kids' summer camp that year. Suddenly, ATM jokes weren't funny anymore. The words hit me like a cold gust of wind, slicing through the warm, comfortable atmosphere of the dinner table. We were at my parents' house, a big old ranch-style place in the suburbs, where the family gathered every holiday. The table was set with the good china, and the air smelled like honey, glazed ham and mashed potatoes. The kids were running around, my mom was fussing over the dessert, and my dad was, as usual, grumbling about his golf game. It was supposed to be just another Easter dinner, filled with laughter and light-hearted conversation. But then Jenna spoke up, and everything shifted. She said it so casually, like she was talking about the weather. "You're not really part of this family, you're just the ATM." I froze. I didn't even blink. My fork hovered mid-air as everyone else around the table burst into laughter. I could see Kevin, my brother, his face flushed from the wine, chuckling along with my mom and aunt. Jenna's words hung in the air like a bad joke that no one had the courage to take seriously. But I took it seriously. I had spent the last 7 years playing the role of the family's financial savior, quietly slipping money into their hands whenever they needed it, never asking for a thing in return. The kids' braces, Kevin's car repairs, Christmas presents, the expensive summer camps for his kids, all of it. But it wasn't just money, it was time, it was patience, it was my life, and here was Jenna, dismissing it all in one sentence. "Yeah, that's right," she continued, as if she hadn't just dropped a bomb in the middle of dinner. "Your life must be so easy, Brett. No kids to worry about, no mortgage, just money to burn. You should be more generous with it." I looked at her. And then I looked at Kevin. He wasn't saying a word, just smiling like he always did when things got uncomfortable. Like it wasn't his problem. I could feel my face tightening, my hands steady on the table. My parents, the people who had taught me about family loyalty, sat there with forced smiles. My mom made a little noise, a soft, "Oh," but I could tell it didn't bother the way it bothered me. She wasn't the one being called an ATM. The joke wasn't funny anymore. The thing was, this wasn't the first time this had happened. Over the years, the comments had piled up, small remarks about how I was the successful bachelor, the guy who could afford the fancy dinners and vacations, because I didn't have to worry about kids and family expenses. I never said anything, never objected. It was easier to let it slide, to play the role they expected of me. I didn't mind, not at first. I had the money, and they had the need. That's what family does, right? But then, like a crack in a dam, it all came to the surface in that moment. Jenna wasn't just making a joke. She was speaking the truth. The truth I had been avoiding for years. I didn't laugh. I didn't smile. I just stared at my plate, the weight of her words settling like a stone in my stomach. They were all waiting for me to laugh too. But I couldn't. I wasn't laughing anymore. "Brett." Kevin's voice broke through my thoughts. "You okay over there?" I met his gaze, steady and calm. "I'm fine," I said, pushing my plate aside. "Actually, I think I'm done here." Everyone stopped. The room went quiet, save for the clinking of silverware on porcelain. My parents glanced at each other, confusion in their eyes. "No dessert?" my mom asked, her voice trembling with the usual concern when I pulled away. "Not tonight," I said, standing up. "I've got an early job tomorrow." It wasn't a lie. I did have work the next morning, but that wasn't why I was leaving. I didn't care about the ham or the pie or the coffee. I cared about what had just happened, what had been said out loud, for everyone to hear. "Brett," Kevin said, following me as I grabbed my coat. "Jenna didn't mean it like that. You know how she is, she speaks before she thinks." "I know," I said, looking at him. I've got to go." I gave my mom a kiss on the cheek, waved to the rest of the family, and walked out of the house. The cool evening air hit me like a slap, but it wasn't enough to shake the numbness settling in my chest. As I got into my truck and drove away, I thought about everything that had happened in the last few minutes, in the last few years. For the first time, I wasn't sure I could keep playing the part they'd cast me in. The ATM. The family bank. The guy who always picked up the tab. I was done. And it wasn't just about the money anymore. It was about respect. It was about boundaries. And I wasn't going to be the one to ignore it any longer. Not this time. The drive home was quiet. I didn't turn on the radio. The only sound was the hum of my tires on the road. A steady rhythm that matched the thoughts running through my head. This was it. The moment everything changed. The moment I stopped being the ATM. I didn't go back to my parents' house for a while after that Easter dinner. The days that followed were quieter, more introspective, My phone was quiet too, with only a few texts from my mom asking if I was okay. I didn't respond to any of them right away. There was nothing to say. What could I say? That I was fine. That I wasn't bothered by what happened. The truth was, I was angry, but I didn't know where to start. So, I didn't start at all. The weeks passed, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted. Before that dinner, I had been fine with how things were. I had money, they had needs. It made sense. Family helps family, right? But now, the cracks in the facade were undeniable. I had been playing a role for years, doing what was expected of me. I kept my head down, provided when asked, and said nothing. It was easier that way. But now, I couldn't ignore the way things had gone. I could still hear Jenna's voice in my head, casual, flippant, "You're just the ATM." It wasn't just the words, it was the way she said it, as if I were just a tool to be used. My brother Kevin wasn't any better. Over the years, he had asked for help countless times. Sometimes he'd call, sometimes it was through my parents or Jenna. But it always felt like the same thing. A little crisis here, a little crisis there. Always a reason why they couldn't make it work on their own. And I, always the reliable one, would step in. Sometimes I didn't mind. I had the money after all, and Kevin, well, he was my brother. I wanted to help him. But the problem was, it had never ended. I thought I was helping out of love, but somewhere along the line, it had turned into an unspoken expectation. It wasn't just about fixing things anymore, it was about maintaining a lifestyle. Kevin and Jenna didn't want to change their habits. They wanted someone to pay for them, someone to fix their mistakes. And I was that someone. The first time I helped out, it was a small thing. Kevin had been laid off from his job at the bank. And he needed help covering his mortgage and car payments. I wrote him a check for $8,000, no questions asked. I told him, "Pay me back whenever you can." No pressure. I was doing well at the time. And I didn't think it was a big deal. He promised to pay me back as soon as he could. But the money never came back. And the requests kept coming. The second time was for braces for their oldest daughter. $3,200. Then it was a car repair, $2,400. Christmas one year, I covered their kids' presents, $1,500. Then there was the summer camp. The travel baseball league. Each time it was a little more, a little bigger, but always with the same promise, "This is the last time." And I kept believing it. I kept writing the checks. But over the years something started to shift. The gratitude faded. It wasn't even the money that started to bother me, it was the way it was expected. It became a part of their routine, like breathing. The gratitude was gone. They didn't say thank you anymore. Instead it was always, "Can you handle this?" Or, "Can you help out this time?" It started to feel less like helping and more like being taken for granted. I didn't mind at first. I had the money, and they had the need. Family helps family. But when I saw how Kevin had bought a new car, a $60,000 SUV, brand new, leather seats, sunroof, I started to see things differently. When Jenna posted pictures from their beach vacation to Florida, nobody asked how they afforded it. But when I mentioned maybe taking a fishing trip to Alaska, my mom asked if that was really necessary, given that Kevin's family could probably use help with some upcoming expenses. The message was clear. My money was everyone's money, but their money was their own. That was when it really started to get under my skin. I wasn't just the ATM. I was the fool. The one who had been taken advantage of for years without ever asking for anything in return. I started to keep track of it all. I had a spreadsheet, a detailed list of everything I had given them. $47,600. That was how much I had given them over the past 7 years. Not loaned, given. Every dollar. Not a single penny had come back. I couldn't tell you when I started to resent it. It wasn't an overnight thing. It crept up on me slowly, like the tide rising. But by the time Easter dinner rolled around, I was done pretending. Done pretending that I didn't mind. Done pretending that everything was fine. And then Jenna said it. "You're not really part of this family. You're just the ATM." I could feel it in my chest, the way my heart tightened. It wasn't the joke that stung, it was the truth behind it. I had been the ATM for years. I had let them treat me like their personal bank. And I had done it willingly. But no more. I didn't go back to my parents' house for a while after that. I told them I was busy. I told them I had work to do. I didn't want to see Kevin. I didn't want to see Jenna. I didn't want to hear the excuses, the apologies, the promises. Because I knew, deep down, they didn't mean it. They were never going to change. And I wasn't going to keep enabling them. That's when I realized, it wasn't just about the money. It was about respect. It was about finally drawing a line. The next morning, I woke up with a sense of clarity that I hadn't felt in years. The anger from Easter dinner was still there, simmering beneath the surface, but something else had settled in. Something cold, something final. I wasn't going to let myself be used anymore. I wasn't going to be the ATM. And I wasn't going to apologize for it. I spent the day at work, trying to focus on my business. But even with the familiar hum of the air conditioning systems I was repairing, my mind kept drifting back to the dinner. Back to Jenna's words, the way everyone had laughed, the way Kevin hadn't said a thing. I couldn't shake the image of him sitting there, his face flushed with wine, barely even blinking as his wife made a mockery of me. The worst part. I realized that, for all the years I had bailed him out, he had never really cared. At least not enough to step in when his wife crossed the line. By the time I got home that night, I had made up my mind. I wasn't going to give Kevin any more money. No more loans, no more gifts, no more, just this once. That's when my phone buzzed. I glanced at it. It was a text from Kevin. Hey man, I know things were tense at dinner, but we really need to talk. I need your help with something, just for the kids. I stared at the screen. My hands tightened around the phone, but I didn't respond right away. I didn't want to say anything in the heat of the moment. It had been so easy, so automatic, to step in and help whenever they called. But that had changed. Now, it felt like I was drowning in this silent agreement where I did everything for them, and they did nothing for me in return. The cycle had to end. I set the phone down, walked to the fridge, and grabbed a beer. I needed something to settle my thoughts. I opened it, took a sip, and let the cold liquid hit my throat. There was a knot in my stomach, but it wasn't the beer. It was the decision I had just made. A decision I knew would change everything. But change had been coming for a long time. I just hadn't seen it until now. It was an hour later when Kevin texted again. Brett, please, it's about the kids' summer camp. We're really counting on you to help out this year. I closed my eyes, feeling the weight of the words. Summer camp. $4,500. I had covered it before. I had always covered it before. But this year, no. I stared at the screen for a moment before I typed a simple reply. I won't be contributing this year. Good luck with it. I hit send before I could change my mind. Then I put the phone down, and went to the living room to watch TV. I didn't wait for a response. I didn't need to. It wasn't long before my phone buzzed again. This time it was a voicemail. I hesitated before opening it. Kevin's voice came through, sounding urgent. Hey man, listen, there must be some kind of misunderstanding. We really need to talk about this. You know how much the kids were looking forward to camp. We've already registered them, and the deadline's coming up. If you could just come through for us this one last time, it would mean a lot. Please call me back. I let it sit there, playing over and over in my head. His words were soft pleading, but they didn't reach me the way they used to. The past few years of bailing him out, of always saying Wes, when they asked for money, had finally caught up with me. I wasn't their ATM, I was their brother. And I had lost sight of that for far too long. I took a deep breath, let the voicemail finish, and then deleted it. There was no need to keep going down that path. I wasn't going to be dragged back into it. For a moment, I thought about calling him. I thought about telling him I'd changed my mind, offering an explanation, maybe a justification. But then I remembered the feeling that had come over me when Jenna spoke at dinner. The way she had dismissed me like I was nothing more than a machine to serve their needs. I couldn't go back to that. I couldn't keep letting them use me. The phone buzzed again, and this time it was a text from Jenna. Brett, I know you're upset. But this isn't about you, it's about the kids. Please, just think about it. They're so excited. You don't want to disappoint them. I looked at the screen and felt my heart sink. It wasn't about the kids. It was about them. About Kevin and Jenna. They had used their kids as emotional leverage before, and now they were doing it again. But not this time. This time. I wasn't going to be the one to fix it. I wasn't going to be the one to pay for it. I didn't respond to Jenna. I just shut off my phone and set it face down on the table. I leaned back in my chair, closed my eyes, and took a deep breath. The decision was made. I wasn't going to help them anymore. No matter how hard they tried to guilt me into it. I was done. I spent the rest of the night in silence, trying to hold on to the peace that was slowly settling over me. It wasn't going to be easy. I knew that. I had a lifetime of habits to break, of expectations to shatter. But I couldn't live like this anymore. Not for them. Not for anyone. And as the night wore on, I realized something. The hardest part wasn't telling them no. The hardest part was realizing that I had the power to say no in the first place. For so long, I had been a silent participant in a family dynamic that didn't serve me. But now for the first time, I was reclaiming that power. And it felt like freedom. The next morning Kevin called again. This time, I didn't even listen to the voicemail. I didn't need to. I already knew what he would say. And I had already made my decision. It was over. The ATM was closed. The next few days were a blur of texts, missed calls, and silence. I stuck to my decision, refusing to pick up when Kevin called or texted me. I felt like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders, but at the same time, I couldn't shake the guilt. There was always that nagging voice in the back of my head, telling me I was being selfish. I tried to push it down, but it wasn't easy. The whole situation made me question whether I was doing the right thing. Was I really being fair? Was I abandoning my family? A week passed, and I couldn't escape the feeling that something was brewing. Something I wasn't prepared for. I had told myself I wasn't going to back down, that I couldn't afford to. But there was always that little voice, the one that said I was letting them down, that I was being too harsh. Then, just when I thought I might get some peace, my mom called. It was a Sunday evening, and the sky outside was already dimming. I'd just gotten home from a long day of work, and was about to grab some dinner when the phone rang. Seeing her name on the screen, made my stomach tighten. I almost didn't answer it. I had been avoiding her for days now, but the guilt I couldn't push it down anymore. "Hey Mom," I said, trying to keep my voice light. "Brett," she said, her voice soft but insistent. "I need to talk to you." I rubbed my eyes. "What about?" "It's about Kevin," she replied. "And, Jenna, they're really upset, honey. We all are." I leaned back against the counter, the cold granite digging into my back. "Mom, I told you already. I'm not helping them out this time. I'm done." There was a pause on the other end, and I could almost hear her trying to find the right words. "Brett, I know it's been tough. I know you're upset about what happened at Easter. But you have to understand, they're struggling. Kevin's been under a lot of pressure lately. You know how hard he works." "I know how hard he works, Mom," I said, trying to keep my frustration in check. "That's the problem. He keeps making terrible choices, and now I'm supposed to fix them every time." I could hear her sigh, the weight of the years of unspoken tension settling between us. "I just think you're being too hard on him. On all of us." Her voice was gentle now, almost pleading. "We're family, Brett. Don't you remember that?" I closed my eyes, feeling a tightness in my chest. The words hit harder than I expected. I had spent so many years trying to be the good son, the good brother, the one who kept everything together when it fell apart. But the truth was, I was exhausted. "I remember, Mom," I said quietly. "But family isn't just about money, it's about respect. And right now, I don't feel respected." There was another long pause. "Brett, I don't think you understand how much this is affecting everyone. Kevin's been really down. He's blaming himself for all of this. And Jenna, well, she's feeling it too. The kids have been asking about you." The mention of the kids hit me like a punch to the gut. I hadn't thought about how all this was affecting them. They didn't deserve to feel the weight of my decisions. They were just kids. But at the same time, I couldn't keep using them as an excuse to throw away my boundaries. "I'm not going to change my mind," I said, my voice firm now. "I've given them enough. I'm not going to keep doing this. Not if they don't start taking responsibility for their own lives." I could hear her biting back tears. "Brett, please. This isn't just about money, it's about love. About being there when your family needs you." "I've been there, Mom," I said, feeling the heat rise in my chest. "For 7 years, I've been there. And all I've gotten is more requests, more expectations. I'm not doing it anymore." There was a long silence, the kind that made me feel like I was standing on the edge of a cliff, ready to fall. Then, finally, she spoke again, quieter this time. "I just wish you'd think about it. You don't have to decide everything right now. Just think about it, Brett." I didn't say anything. What could I say? She wasn't going to understand. She would always side with Kevin and Jenna. I had known that for a long time. She wasn't ready to see the truth the way I had. "I've thought about it, Mom," I said softly. "And I'm done." She didn't respond. I heard her breathing on the other end, the sound of the phone shuffling, as she probably wiped her eyes. "Okay," she said finally. "I hope you know what you're doing. I love you, Brett. I always will." "I know, Mom. I love you too." We hung up, and I felt a strange calm settle over me. It wasn't the peace I had hoped for, but it was something close. The next morning, I woke up early and headed to the job site, trying to focus on work, on anything but the mess I had left behind. But the truth kept gnawing at me, and no matter how much I tried to push it away, I couldn't. I had set a boundary. I had finally said no. But that didn't mean it was easy. Kevin called again that afternoon, but I didn't pick up. I couldn't. It wasn't about the money anymore. It was about breaking free from the role I had been playing for so long. The role of the fixer, the one who picked up the pieces when everything fell apart. It was time for Kevin to pick up his own pieces. But the longer I stood there, the more I realized, this wasn't just about Kevin, it was about me. And for the first time in years, I was finally putting myself first. The pressure started to mount almost immediately. After my conversation with Mom, the family didn't wait long to make their move. It wasn't just Kevin now. Everyone seemed to have something to say about my decision. My phone rang non-stop, texts flooding in from every direction, and it wasn't just Kevin reaching out anymore. It was my mom, my aunt, even my cousin. Everyone had something to say. The first few calls were predictable. Kevin was angry. His voice was tight, like he was holding back more than just words. His message was simple. You're really not going to help. After everything. It wasn't just about the money anymore. I realized it was about me pulling away. I wasn't playing my part in the family drama anymore, and they didn't know how to handle it. I didn't respond to Kevin's calls. I didn't even listen to his voicemails. I knew exactly what he was going to say. What else could he say? He needed money, and I wasn't giving it to him. So I let it ring, each time knowing exactly what would follow: a plea, a guilt trip, a reminder of how much they had done for me. And maybe, just maybe, if I held out long enough, they'd get it. The next morning my mom called. This time I answered, even though I didn't want to. I could already hear the tension in her voice. It was always there when it came to Kevin. "Brett," she said, her voice softer now but no less insistent. "Why won't you help? You're not being fair." I leaned against the counter, the weight of the decision starting to settle in my chest. "Mom, I told you, I'm done. I've given them everything I can. I can't keep doing this." "You don't understand," she said, almost pleading. "Kevin's struggling. He doesn't know how he's going to keep up with everything. And now you're making things worse." I squeezed my eyes shut. The guilt was crawling under my skin. It wasn't just about the money, it was about Kevin's failure, about him being in a position where he had to rely on me. "I'm not making things worse. Mom, I'm not the one who spent money they didn't have." My voice came out sharper than I intended, but it felt good to say it. For once, I wasn't going to let them shift the blame back onto me. She was silent for a moment, and then sighed. "You're being unreasonable. Kevin's family is in turmoil. He's so upset, and he doesn't know how to fix this. He thinks you're punishing him." "I'm not punishing anyone," I said. "I'm giving them a chance to fix it themselves. They need to figure this out. It's not my job to bail them out anymore." "I just don't understand you," she said, her voice softening. "You've always been the responsible one, Brett. The one who helps." "Exactly," I said, my tone quieter now. "I've always been the responsible one, and maybe it's time someone else took responsibility." There was a long pause on the other end. The silence stretched, filled with things unsaid. Finally, she spoke again, her voice heavy with emotion. "You've always been so good to us, Brett. But now you're acting like you don't care. Like you don't care about your brother, your nieces and nephews. I never thought you'd be the one to turn your back on family." I stood up straighter, the words cutting through me. "I'm not turning my back, Mom. I'm setting a boundary. I've been carrying this family for years. And I can't do it anymore." "I don't know what to say," she murmured. "I just don't know what happened to you. I'm still the same person, Mom. But I'm tired of being expected to fix everything." She didn't reply to that. Instead, she let out a soft sigh, resigned. "I love you, Brett. I hope you understand what you're doing." "I do," I said, my voice firm. "But I can't keep doing this. I'm done." After I hung up, I felt an overwhelming sense of relief mixed with guilt. It was a strange combination. I had set a boundary, something I had never done before with my family, and it felt both right and wrong. A few hours later, my phone buzzed again. This time it was a text from Jenna. I hesitated before opening it, but curiosity got the better of me. "Brett, we really need to talk. This is tearing us apart. The kids are asking about you, and Kevin's beside himself. Please, just reconsider. This isn't just about the money, it's about family. About us. Don't let this be the thing that breaks us." I stared at the message, my thumb hovering over the screen. Part of me wanted to respond, to explain, to apologize, but I stopped myself. What was there to explain? What was there to apologize for? I had done enough for them. I put the phone down. The silence in the room was deafening, and for the first time in days, I felt a sense of calm. It wasn't peace, but it was something close. But it didn't last long. The next day, Kevin showed up at my door. I was in the middle of a job, checking on a unit that needed repairs, when I saw him through the window. He was standing at the front door, looking unsure, hesitant. I wasn't ready for this. I let him knock 3 times before I opened the door. I leaned against the frame, keeping a distance. "Hey man," he said, his voice tight, "we need to talk." "About what?" I asked, my eyes narrowing. "About the camp. About what you texted me," he said, his voice rising slightly, though he was trying to keep it steady. "You're really not going to help?" I didn't flinch. I didn't back down. "Nope. Jake, come on. The kids are so excited. They've been talking about it all year. You can't just back out now." "I never agreed to it in the first place," I said, my voice calm. "I told you I'd think about it. I thought about it. The answer is no." He stood there looking at me, his face going from confusion to anger. "This is about Easter, isn't it?" "Yeah," I said. "It's about Easter. It's about everything that came before it." "Don't do this, man," he said, his voice tight with frustration. "The kids will be disappointed." "The kids will be fine," I said. "They'll figure it out. They always do." Kevin's face turned red, and I could see the panic in his eyes. "You're really going to let me hang out to dry?" "You're not hanging," I said. "You're facing the consequences of your choices." He didn't say anything for a long moment. Then he turned, his shoulders slumped, and walked away. I watched him get into his car and drive off. I felt nothing but a strange sense of relief. But that didn't last either. The fallout came faster than I expected, and the pressure was like a vise tightening around me. Kevin didn't let up after our conversation. He called and texted, but I didn't answer. I knew what he was going to say, and I didn't want to hear it. I had made my decision, and I wasn't going to back down. But it wasn't just Kevin. My mom called again, and then my aunt, my uncle, even my cousin. They all seemed to have the same message: "Kevin's struggling. Why won't you help?" At each conversation felt like a weight on my chest, but I kept holding firm. I had spent years cleaning up their messes. And now it was time for them to face the consequences of their actions. It was a few days later when my mom showed up at my door, unannounced, of course. She had that look in her eyes. The same look she used to get when I was a kid. Right before she tried to convince me to do something I didn't want to do. I had a feeling I knew what this visit was about. But I didn't move to open the door right away. I needed a moment to collect myself. When I finally opened it, she was standing there with her arms folded, looking at me with concern, but also with that edge of frustration. "Brett, we need to talk," she said softly, but I could hear the worry in her voice. "Mom, I've told you already. I'm not helping Kevin. I'm not helping anyone else, I'm done." She shook her head, her eyes searching mine. "You don't understand, do you? Kevin is falling apart. And Jenna, she's beside herself. They don't know what to do. You're the only one who can help them. Why won't you?" I leaned against the doorframe, crossing my arms. "I'm not their savior, Mom. I've done enough. And I'm tired of being expected to fix everything for them." She looked like I had slapped her. The hurt was immediate, and it took me by surprise. I hadn't expected her reaction to sting as much as it did. "But he's your brother, Brett. He's been there for you through everything. And now he needs you. You're just going to let him drown." I stood up straighter, trying to keep my voice calm. "He's the one who got himself into this. And now, he needs to figure it out. I'm not going to keep enabling his mistakes." "Are you really going to be like this? Are you really going to turn your back on him?" she asked, her voice shaking slightly. I closed my eyes for a moment. I knew she was hurt, and maybe I was being harsh, but I couldn't back down. If I did, I would never escape this role they had cast me in. I wouldn't be Brett anymore, the person who had a life of his own. I would be Brett, the ATM. And I couldn't do that anymore. "I'm not turning my back, Mom," I said quietly. "I'm just saying no, I can't keep doing this. For once, I'm putting myself first." She didn't answer right away. She just stood there, looking at me with that same hurt expression. After a moment, she sighed. "I don't know what's happened to you, Brett. You've always been the one to help. The one who always did the right thing." "I am doing the right thing," I said, my voice firm. "This is the first time I'm doing what's best for me. I'm not going to keep sacrificing my own life for them." She swallowed hard, clearly struggling with the decision I had made. "I just don't know if I can support this. I don't know if I can watch you turn your back on your brother." Her words stung more than I expected. It wasn't just the money, it wasn't just about Kevin anymore. It was about how much of my life had been consumed by their problems, by their expectations of me. I had let them shape who I was. and now I was finally breaking free. But it didn't make it any easier. I'm not turning my back on anyone, Mom. But I'm done being used. I paused, then added, I'm not saying yes to them anymore. I'm done. She didn't say anything after that. She just nodded slowly, her eyes distant. I hope you know what you're doing, bruh. I do. With that, she turned and walked away. I watched her go, the weight of the conversation settling heavily in the air. I knew it wasn't the end. It couldn't be. But at least I had said what I needed to say. The next few days were filled with nothing but silence. Kevin's calls, the texts, everything came to a halt. I thought maybe they were finally getting the message. But then I heard from my cousin. Hey man, he said over the phone. I just wanted to check in. I know things are tense, but I've been hearing some things. I sighed, rubbing my hand over my face. Like what? Like how Kevin's taking this, he said, his voice serious. He's really pissed, man. He's blaming you for everything that's gone wrong. I wasn't surprised. I had known it was coming. It was always easier to blame someone else than to take responsibility. I don't care what Kevin thinks, I said. He's the one who got himself into this mess. I get it, man, he said quickly. But you know how Kevin is. He's never going to admit he was wrong. He's going to point the finger at anyone he can, and right now you're the easiest target. I paused, trying to figure out how to respond. I'm done. I'm done letting him use me, done being the fall guy. If he can't take responsibility, then that's on him. There was a long pause on the other end, and then my cousin said, Look, I don't want to get in the middle of this. But I just wanted to give you a heads up. Kevin's planning an intervention. He's talked to Mom and Dad, and they're going to corner you at Christmas. They're going to try to get you to come back and help. I sat there in stunned silence for a moment. An intervention? For what? For saying no. Thanks for the heads up, I said, my voice steady. But I'm not changing my mind. Just wanted to warn you, my cousin said. Good luck, man. I don't know how this is going to go down. The line went quiet, and I put the phone down slowly. An intervention. They were actually going to try and force me to help them again. But I wasn't backing down. I wasn't going to be the ATM anymore. I had made that decision, and nothing was going to change it. Christmas was coming, and I could already feel the pressure building. But I wasn't going to fold. I had learned something about myself over the past few weeks. I had learned that I didn't need to carry everyone else's burden anymore. I had learned how to say no, and that was the hardest thing I had ever done. But I was done being their safety net. Christmas came faster than I expected, and with it, a sense of dread that crept into my chest. I had been avoiding my family for weeks, taking calls only from a few select people, mostly my cousin who had warned me about the intervention. But as the holiday approached, the pressure to attend my parents' Christmas dinner loomed large. I hadn't been to one of their dinners in years. It used to be a tradition, everyone gathering around the table, the scent of turkey and ham filling the air, the sounds of kids running around, and the soft murmur of conversation. But this year, it felt different. It was as if the cracks in the foundation of our family were too wide to ignore anymore. They were real now, unfixable. I tried to avoid it. I told myself I didn't need to go. After all, I had made my decision. But my mom, always persistent, called one last time, her voice filled with a kind of resigned hope. Brett, she said, her voice quieter than I had ever heard it before. Please come to dinner. This is really important. We need to talk about this. I hadn't heard from Kevin in weeks, but I knew he was pushing the issue with her. She didn't ask me outright, but I could hear it in her tone. She was trying to get me to change my mind. I'm not changing my mind, Mom, I said, my voice firm. I've made it clear. But it's Christmas, she said, as if that somehow made everything better. It's about family. You can't just let this tear us apart. I paused, my mind racing. She was right in a way. Christmas was about family. But how could I show up, pretending everything was fine when I knew it wasn't? How could I walk into that house, knowing the expectations they all had for me? I'm sorry, Mom, I said finally. But I can't. Not this time. Her silence on the other end of the line was deafening. I knew it hurt her. I could feel it, even through the phone. But I had to stay strong. This wasn't about me rejecting them. It was about finally rejecting the role I had been forced into for so long. The day of the dinner came, and as much as I tried to distract myself, the guilt was there, nagging at me. I went to work as usual, trying to keep my focus on the tasks at hand. But all I could think about was how empty my phone was. How quiet my life had become without the constant stream of requests. The constant pressure to fix things for people who never seemed to learn. Around 3 in the afternoon my phone buzzed. I glanced at it and my heart sank. It was a group text from my parents. Dinner is at 6. Please come. We all miss you. The message hit harder than I expected. They were trying. They were still trying to get me back, to have things be normal again. And for a moment, I almost caved. Maybe I was being too harsh. Maybe I should go and just get it over with. But then I remembered the last time I had been there. How everyone had just laughed at me. How Jenna had so easily reduced me to the family's financial resource. I remembered how my mom had asked me to pay for yet another one of Kevin's mistakes and how, even after I had been there for all of them for years, I was still just the ATM. I didn't respond to the text. I just turned off my phone and kept working. By 6 o'clock, I was still at the job site. I stayed late, finishing up a project I had been putting off. I didn't want to sit in that house with all of them, pretending everything was fine when I knew it wasn't. When I knew I was just a backup plan for their problems. The next day, my cousin texted me. Ita, they're planning to corner you after the meal. They want you to agree to help Kevin again. You need to be prepared for it. I wasn't surprised. I had known it was coming. They didn't understand. They didn't want to understand. They wanted me to be the one who fixed everything. They wanted me to be the ATM again. I didn't reply to my cousin's text either. I didn't need to be prepared. I had already made my decision, and nothing they could say would change it. Then, as if on cue, my mom called again. Brett, she said, her voice shaking now. Kevin's angry. He's blaming you for everything. He says you've abandoned him. I haven't abandoned anyone. I said, my voice steady but cold. I'm just not going to keep paying for his mistakes. He's struggling, she said, her voice quieter now, like she was trying to keep from crying. His life is falling apart, and he doesn't know what to do. Why can't you help him one more time? For the kids. The mention of the kids hit me harder than I expected. I had spent so much time thinking about the money, about the burden they had placed on me, that I had forgotten about the kids. Their innocent faces. Their excited voices when they talked about camp, about all the things they wanted to do. But this wasn't about them. It was about Kevin and Jenna. It was about the fact that they had used me for years without ever once considering what it was doing to me. And it was time for them to face the consequences. Mom, I said, my voice softer now, but resolute. If Kevin wants to make changes in his life, he has to do it himself. He's a grown man. And I'm not going to keep enabling him. She didn't answer for a long time. Finally she sighed. I don't understand you anymore, Brett, I just don't. I know, Mom. I know. And with that, we ended the call. The next few days were a blur. My parents tried to reach out, but I ignored their calls. Kevin sent me a message, but I didn't read it. It didn't matter. I had made my choice, and I wasn't going to let anyone guilt me into changing my mind. But then came the real test. It was New Year's Eve, and I found myself alone in my apartment. The lights from the city twinkled outside the window, but inside, everything was still. For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe. I had let go of the weight I had been carrying for so long, and it felt liberating. Then, my phone buzzed again. It was a text from Jenna. Wutsu, we need to talk, this is about the kids. I put the phone down and stared at the screen. The same old song and dance. But this time, I didn't feel the pressure. This time, I didn't feel guilty. This time, I was done. The months that followed felt like a slow, moving river, one I had to navigate with careful, deliberate strokes. I wasn't sure where this path would take me, but I knew I had made the right choice. The decision to set boundaries had felt almost impossible at first. But now, with each passing day, I felt a little more at ease with it. The Christmas dinner came and went without me. I'd already decided that I wouldn't be attending, and I wasn't about to change my mind. My mom had tried to guilt me into coming, calling the morning of to say, "This isn't like you, Brett. Your family is really worried about you." But I just couldn't do it. Not when I knew they'd be cornering me, to try and convince me to help Kevin again. Instead, I spent Christmas in a way I hadn't in years, on my own terms. I slept in, made myself a huge breakfast, watched some football, and ordered Chinese food for dinner. I spent the day with friends who didn't have any expectations of me. It felt freeing, like I was finally breathing again, after holding my breath for so long. That evening, around 8 o'clock, my phone started blowing up. It was like the whole family had collectively decided to send me a message. I knew exactly what it was about. My mom's voicemail was the first. "Brett, we had a very important family meeting tonight. You need to call us back immediately. This cannot continue." Kevin's text was next. "Real mature, skipping Christmas. Guess you don't care about family at all. Then came Jenna's, adding more emotional weight to the pile. Your niece asked why Uncle Brett wasn't here. I told her you were too busy counting your money. I hope you're happy. I let the messages pile up unread. My finger hovered over the screen, and for a moment, I almost felt the old pull to call them back. But I stopped myself. I had spent too many years trying to fix things for them, and I wasn't going to fall back into that pattern. I didn't even listen to the rest of the messages. Instead, I sent a text to the family group chat. It was simple, clear, and to the point. Since everyone is so concerned about my money, and how I spend it, here's some clarity. Over the past 7 years, I've given Kevin $47,600. Not loaned, given not one penny has come back. I stopped giving because I was called an ATM at Easter dinner, and everyone laughed. I'm done being treated like a bank branch. This is not a negotiation. This is permanent. Have a Merry Christmas. I hit send and muted the chat. I didn't wait for any responses. The decision had been made, and I wasn't going to let them drag me back into their drama. I spent the next few days in peace, mostly. My phone stayed quiet. For the first time in years, I wasn't hearing the familiar ring of requests, guilt trips, and emotional manipulation. But then came the follow-up. A week later my mom called again. I didn't answer, but she left a voicemail. Brett, I hope you know what you're doing. Kevin's life is falling apart. His marriage is over. The kids are struggling, and you just watched it all happen. I don't know what's happened to you. I deleted it without listening to the rest. I already knew what she would say. She was still trying to make me feel responsible for Kevin's failure. But I wasn't going to buy into it anymore. I had given him everything I could: money, time, support. And it hadn't been enough. Because it was never about the money. It was about control. I didn't respond to my mom, not that time, not any of the times after. It wasn't out of spite. It was because I had to stay strong. I had to protect myself from being pulled back into the old patterns. Kevin called once more, but this time I didn't even bother with the voicemail. I had made my decision. The following months were a strange combination of relief and discomfort. The family didn't speak to me much after that. I was still invited to events, but I could tell I was no longer welcomed in the same way. My parents treated me with quiet disappointment, as though I had betrayed them. Kevin avoided me entirely, and I could feel the space between us growing wider. But I didn't regret it. For the first time in years, I wasn't drowning in the chaos of my family's financial problems. I had my business to focus on, and it was growing. My new boundaries had freed up more time for me to work, and without the constant distractions of Kevin's requests, I had started to make real progress. I hired a few more technicians, invested in better equipment, and was bidding on bigger contracts. Things were looking up. I also found myself doing things I hadn't done in years. I took up hiking on the weekends, went to the gym more often, and started seeing a woman named Rachel, who had her own career, and didn't expect me to pay for everything. It felt good to build something on my own, without it being tied to anyone else's needs. But there was still a part of me that longed for something more. I wanted to feel like I wasn't alone in all of this. I wanted to be able to sit down with my family, to talk openly without the tension, without the expectations. But that wasn't going to happen anytime soon. Then, one day, I got a letter from Jenna. It was long, handwritten, and full of emotion. She apologized, sort of. She said she regretted the Easter comment. But she didn't apologize for the years of taking advantage of me. Instead, the letter focused on how hard things had been for them, and how Kevin had tried his best. It ended with a request for reconciliation. We want to move past this, she wrote. We want to be a family again. I read the letter a few times, then set it down on the table. It wasn't an apology. Not the kind I needed. I didn't respond to the letter. But I framed it. I hung it up in my office as a reminder. Not out of spite, well, maybe a little bit of spite, but as a reminder of the lessons I had learned. A reminder that people will take everything you're willing to give, and still blame you when you stop giving it. A reminder that family isn't an excuse for exploitation. A reminder that the word no is a complete sentence. And a reminder that sometimes, the best thing you can do for people is let them face the natural consequences of their own choices, especially if, they're family. Months later, I heard through my cousin that Kevin and Jenna had gotten divorced. The financial stress had torn them apart. Kevin was still struggling with his debts, and Jenna, after years of relying on Kevin's income, was now working full-time at a retail store. My parents had tried to reach out again, asking if I'd reconsider helping Kevin, but I didn't respond. The last time I saw my parents was at my cousin's kid's birthday party. It had been over a year since I'd seen them. And there they were. Sitting quietly on the other side of the room. Kevin wasn't there. I didn't speak to them much, but my mom pulled me aside at one point. "I hope you're happy, Brett," she said. "Kevin's life has completely fallen apart. His marriage is over. He's struggling. And you just watched it all happen." I looked her in the eye and said, "I didn't make him buy an expensive car. I didn't make him register for camp he couldn't afford. I didn't make him take out multiple high-interest loans. He did all of that himself." She walked away and we didn't speak again. I wasn't happy. But I wasn't miserable, either. I had my peace, and that, I realized, was all I really needed.